Earlier today, the CAP-4 Paulistinha was released, and in this video we're gonna fly with it. Let's roll the intro and then let's start flying. So before we start flying, we of course need to check the aircraft. You can see that I already played around with it a bit because you can see that this is of course not the normal position of the aileron. So the good news is that you can move the aileron, and also some tips are there to how to control it. I already removed the pitot cover, which over here. But the only bad thing is that, for example, on the wheels you can't see the help menu, which is, let's say, not that nice, as well as this part, which I don't have a clue what it is, but you can't move it. So the nice thing about it is that you can really easily access the aircraft, right? Simply open the door, which is only on the right side, by the way, and then you need to step out a bit or press Shift-C, which will bring you inside the cockpit, and then you can close the door by pressing the button. On the back, as you might have seen on my previous video, there are some buttons, but we will go to them, right? The main battery as well as the avionics master, and then there are some options like the throttle and the other instruments on the left side of the pilot. So the good thing is that there's a checklist included, and the checklist can be accessed by pressing the EFB, then go to the aircraft, and inside the aircraft you can go to the checklist menu where you'll see all kind of nice options. So you can check the pre-flight section, the in-flight and the post-flight. So let's go to the this one, right? It's off, which is good, and then you can place a check mark over here, right? And you can do it until you, let's say, kind of fixed everything. You can see that you easily can navigate to the aircraft, right? If you're, let's say, unfamiliar with it, then you can simply have a look at it. In some cases it might be a little bit hard because you can see that the language is in let's say Brazilian or Spanish likely, maybe, which makes it harder. Then here we can see the mixture and the carbon, and you can see that I can move them. Well, the carb heat doesn't work, so that's a warning for you. So if you use the flight stick, or the velocity 1, sorry, you might need to change your, let's say, controls, because as you could see, I couldn't move this one while I can move it with the mouse. So you might need to make some changes. But I will, I would say, post a new video about how to adjust the controls for this aircraft. Then the fuel tank selector, which is over here, a little bit hidden right behind the co-pilot and pilot seat. Check. You can see if it moves, right? You can see it moves perfectly. Off, upper, both, lower. And you need to check and set to, check the car, sorry, over here, and set it to lower tank, which is the case, which is good. And the exterior, we already did it, right? So then we can start the engines. So this is really important. And the reason for this is if you now start the engine, and you can do it via two ways. You can either press this one or you can follow this manual. The aircraft will directly start to move forward. And in this case, right, that could be serious because I would hit this hangar, right? So be careful with this. Definitely recommendation. So it says, okay, pressed control stick, pull back, right? So you can pull back the joystick over here. And then you can switch the battery on. I would say first switch the battery on because that one is over here. And once you've done that, hit the button. Make sure that these are both set to engage, which means ascender. Not sure if I pronounced correctly. Then the throttle switch, and then move it 1, 2. Pump twice, right? So 1, 2. And that's being done. And then it says open 1 per inch, which is, well, not sure what it is, but likely this, right? So then the mixture needs to be set to rich, which it is. You can either use it using the mouse control, you can say kind of adjust it, right, as you can see. But of course you can also use your joystick. Carburetor heater to cold. I think that's 3.0. At least sounds logic. And then we are setting this to lower, which we already did. And then we can press this button. So again, before doing this, press the brakes, because else the aircraft will start moving forward, and that's likely not what you want to do. And here you can see what happens, right? So if I wouldn't have pressed the, I would say, brakes, you would see the aircraft moving forward like this, right? And that's not what you want. So as you can see, the aircraft, let's say, is running, right? So the propeller is running, makes a nice still sound. And then we could say can check the rest of the aircraft, right? Of course, you would normally do this, I would say, before, but you can see that it's already moving around, as you can see. Pretty nice. Also, say moving left, right, works pretty nice. Now, of course, in this case, the challenge is how can we get away from this? So that's something you need to take into account. That if you, I would say, are, on this airport where I'm currently, you might have some challenges. So in this case, you need to keep pressing those brakes. I'm currently pressing only one brake, which looks like to stop the aircraft, so that's good. So here it says, okay, set the throttle to maintain 1000 RPM, which also brings us to the instruments, right? So here's the instruments, and here you can see the RPM. So we need to increase the, I would say, the throttle a little bit more. And you can see it's slowly moving, right? So don't be too aggressive on it. So 1000, which is good. And then we can keep an eye on the oil pressure. That's over here, right? So make sure that it's, would say, between 20 and 60 psi. So here's 20, here's 60. And for those who would like to press option or keys, you can also do that using the shift 1 key, or which brings in this view. Although I'd say currently the EFB is, would say, kind of in the wrong spot. So let's move it around. You can do that. Other options are to press the shift 3, which brings back this normal view like we currently are, and then you can get a better overview. So once that's done, right? Oh, no, then we crashed. See, this is how dangerous it is. And this brings up something weird, right? Because it did now reset me into a very weird state because I'm currently flying already. So let's hit a restart, and then let's hopefully it's on the ground again. So it's super, super, super important to keep pressing those brakes, because else you might end up like me, I would say, in the wall. And that's, of course, not what you want, right? So let's remove the P-dot cover. So I'm going to do that. And then press Shift C, right, to speed up the case. And then if you want to do it really quick, and I mean really quick, you can already press this option, right? So let me open the, let's say, this one, and then make sure that I selected everything. I think the only thing I changed was the fuel tank selector. Pressing this full forward. I'm not going to do this yet because I want to go to the master battery and then switch it on, and then go back to the front over here. And what I'm going to do is make sure that is, I would say, I double check this, right? So this is good. Do I need to do any taxiing? No, it doesn't look like. So here's a trick what I'm going to show you. So again, we're going to do the same thing, right? Let's say we need to press this one twice and then move it a little bit front, not too much. And then hit the click the propeller throttle. So if I would release the parking brakes again, right, you would see it will start moving forward. I know what I forgot. You also know what I forgot, right? You remember that one over here, that view selector, I didn't switch it on. So let me do that for now. So the view selector, and it needs to be set to the lower position. So turning the wheel, then go back to the propeller crank, and then let's try it again. So you can already see that it directly starts moving, right? So be really, really careful with this, because else you will screw up your flight like I did a few seconds ago. So be careful with that again. So let's try it again. And likely I forgot to do something else. What did I forgot? Of course I forgot something, right? Let's and that's one reason why you should never skip this checklist, right? Because if you do it, then you see that you will be screwed just like me, and you can't get the aircraft to work. So did we miss anything here? Did we switch this one on? It's on, right? So that's good. Open 1 inch, which called. Yeah, it looks perfect. So let's try it one more time. Now it works. So you can see that I would say if I would remove the parking brakes, it would already start driving pretty fast. So I would definitely encourage you to decrease the power a lot, and then to turn the aircraft, simply press, for example, only left or right, which will make it possible to turn the aircraft, I would say, in a, let's say, better position. Officially, they say that you need to push the, or need to move the, let's say, what is it called? What they call it? You need to move the control stick fully back. Likely there's a reason for that. But for now, let's try to move the aircraft a little bit further, right? You can see that you need to play a little bit around, play around with it. So here we are, right? And that's also the difficult thing, right? It looks like this aircraft doesn't have a parking brake, and that makes it, I would say, pretty unpleasant, especially if you were, say, new to the aircraft, because it will start, I would say, moving really, really fast around. And that, of course, can result in some weird situations. So now we've started the aircraft, and now I've turned the aircraft to prevent that if something happens, we would say move around and then hit the anchor. We're gonna go to the full checklist. So this is the RPM, which is still good. Then the oil temperature, which can be seen over here, is good. Then avionics, well, we're gonna switch them on, right? They're already on. Yes. And the other buttons are not working, so right, keep that in mind. Cockpit door closed. also makes sense, it's closed. And then we can taxi, right? So first of all, we need to make sure that the taxi area is cleared. Then the taxi brakes, and then throttle in advance, brakes to make sure that the brakes are working, and then use the rudder and the tail wheel to, say, turn the aircraft. Turn and bank indicator, and that's over here, right? So this is the turn and bank indicator. So for those who are new to the aircraft, this one. And the compass, of course, is over here. And then engine run up. And this is what you need to do to, let's say, engine run up, right? This is to make sure that we're flying and we can take off, right? There are some things which you can check, of course. Here you can also see that the throttle level are between 500 and 800 RPM. Magneto switch engaged, right? And those magneto switches, for those who are aware, is over here, right? So let's, I would say, start turning the aircraft, or let's start flying away, I would say. So if you forgot to hide the eye, then press it once again, because then you're good to go. So let's see if we can do some things, right? So let's first make sure that we are setting this to standby. And then the radio, right, you can control it. You can press the barometer, you can change the other options. But for now, we really don't need it because we're going to do a really quick flight. So let's see how it goes. I go outside to show you what happens, right? As soon as I would say release the parking brakes, you can see that it really starts moving around pretty fast. So be aware of that it will start moving like crazy until you would say kind of position the aircraft in the stage where you almost decrease the throttle to 0. And that's really important to understand, right? So let's move it a little bit further. And to move the aircraft, let's say a little bit faster, you can press or you can use the brakes. I'm not sure if it's normal to do that, but hey, that's what I figured out. So here we go. I'm moving into a different angle of the camera, right? Here we go. So first takeoff using this aircraft. And this is why you need to pull the stick back, right? In this case, of course, I did it completely wrong. So don't start, I would say, bashing me on the video. I know I should have started in the cockpit, but that's the reason why you should say push back the joystick, because else you will likely end up in a situation like me that it really starts up or goes airborne really fast, because it's with a not a very large aircraft, right, where you can see, okay, directly it say goes airborne in a really fast state. And as you can see, the climb rate in this case is really high. It will decrease now, so it will say level off hopefully. And we're airborne, right? We're airborne, I would say, in Suriname, which is also, by the way, being updated as part of sim update number 19 already. Number 19 is really crazy. And then we can, I would say, enjoy the scenery around us, right? The bridges, etc. So let's turn the aircraft and then let's see what happens. You can see that it's a move slowly, right? Of course, once you're airborne, right, you can perform all these kind of checks if you want, right? You can close the pre-flight and go to the in-flight menu and then, let's say, follow all these items. Here it says, but to be honest, I do think that there might be some errors on it, so be aware of that. So currently we're in the climb phase, right? You can see the recommended airspeed, the throttle, check the RPMs, which you can do. I can do the instrument checks, as you can see. And all the other things are all pretty well described in this nice checklist. I do expect, however, that the, let's say, manual for the aircraft will also be published on the Flight Simulator website. I'm not entirely 100% sure if that will happen, but in most cases what you will see that they will release it, let's say, either today or else the day after. So keep that in mind. So we're airborne, right, with this CAP-4. As you can see, it flies pretty nicely. Also, it's a relatively easy to maneuver. I would say taking off is a challenge, and likely if we're gonna try to land, it will also be a challenge, right? But hey, challenges are good, right? So let's go inside the aircraft again, and let's reduce throttling a bit. You can see it's pretty sensitive, so keep that in mind. The aircraft is sensitive. Also, that's something you saw during takeoff. It's really sensitive for, let's say, moving around. But you can still see it, say, we can still enjoy the nice scenery over here. Like there behind us is the airport somewhere. There it is, right? So you could consider it, say, flying around there, flying around and then land on it. So let's give it a try. If we look at the inside of the aircraft, we can see that it's pretty nicely modeled, right? A lot of details have been added, which I would say makes it pretty pleasant to fly with. I would say I was kind of surprised about all the details which they have added. So there are a few things which are of course missing, but that has to do with the age of the aircraft, right? So for example, parking brakes are not there. There's no autopilot, no, say, real navigation system. You can only communicate. So you really can use it for VFR flights. And I do think that this part of the world is, let's say, pretty good to try these things out, right? So you can still use the compass, which is in the aircraft, which is in front of us, to navigate. And as long as you move slowly, right, and make slow turns and not fly too fast, it's, let's say, doable to fly the aircraft. The other things like, say, for example, the shadow, as you can see now in the left window, is also pretty nice, nicely modeled, right? You can see it. Water is in this part of the world is not that nice, right? It's a little bit dark, but I think that's kind of realistic. And you can see that, you would say, moving the throttle, right, goes relatively easy. And you can see that the aircraft directly starts to react when I move the throttle to, say, a lower amount of RPMs. And then let's go and try to see if we can, say, land. But of course, we're far too high, so don't recommend to do it not like this, right? So let's first, say, do a flyover or something and then turn around, which gives us some, I would say, some time to enjoy the view, right? So let's move it to this position. And then let's enjoy the weather, right? It's pretty nice weather, right? A little bit cloudy, but also we can see some sunshine, also nicely reflecting in the, I would say, wings of the aircraft. So we're gonna fly over the airport, right? Which is small and in the, let's say it's almost in the middle of the city, right? So be careful with that. And don't say take too steep descent rate, but also don't fly too low because you might hit some buildings which are close to the airport. You also can see another person trying to say depart from this airport, right? Can see runway 29. Not too many cars driving. Well, on the highway it is, but not on the in the rest of the city. Let's turn a little bit to the right because else we can't make the turn. And this is, I would say, pleasant flying, right? So I would say kind of a challenging takeoff, right? That's something which you would say need to take into account, that taking off with this aircraft probably requires some further practicing. Also, you can see sometimes that the aircraft starts to act very weird, so you always need to keep your eyes open, and that's, I would say, with every aircraft, right? Let's make sure that we're decreasing speed because I do think that for landing we are going much too fast. And you can keep an eye on the video or on the map, right on the left side where you can see the location of the airport if you want to, say, kind of trick a little bit. You can see the aircraft's slowly moving down now. So one thing which I don't think the aircraft has is flaps, right? So be aware of that. There are no flaps in the aircraft, based on my knowledge at least. No, because if I move the flaps, nothing happens. And again, as you saw, I would say at the start of this video, you might want to set up a special profile for this aircraft because if you're using the default Velocity 1 profile, which you might have recreated based on one of my videos, it might not work 100% perfectly. So you might need to make some adjustments to it because currently the carb is not working correctly. So let's keep an eye on the aircraft. So let's start slowly turning. Performance is, I would say, pretty decent, I would say. Also, after World Update, right, what we saw with Flight Simulator 2020, that sometimes the, I would say, performance is really not that good. But currently, I would say, at least in this part of the world, it goes pretty well. Not sure how it is in, for example, Brazil, but in Suriname, it works, I would say, pretty nice. All right, and then can enjoy this nice scenery, right? As you can see, scenery is massively updated and also higher quality, right? So it could be that, let's say, initially it might not be that perfect, but let's say once you fly a little bit more around it, you can see that it sharpens a little bit better out. Also, multiple poise have been added, right? I'm not sure, there's not a full list yet of the poise. And that's obviously in the past it was easier to discover, and also, I would say, nicely, I would say, documented. However, with the latest release of the World Update, they didn't call out all the items, although I didn't look yet at the forum posts, which also are a good, I would say, indication of what has changed, because there are very active people working on those forum posts to, I would say, make sure that everything has been documented, which has been changed in this latest World Updates. Right, so let's lower the aircraft a little more, right? I know that this will likely not be 100% perfect landing. I'm already warning you about this. It also could happen that we're completely crashing because we're going really, really fast, as you can see. So likely I should have, let's say, taken a little bit more time, right, to see. Also, in this aircraft or in this airport, what you need to be careful about is the surroundings, right? Because you can see that if I move to this view, you can see that there are a lot of buildings pretty close to the airport. So let's lower the aircraft a little more. The runway is pretty lengthy, right? So let's say we should be good. Although I'd say I would rather touch down the runway a little bit earlier, because I'm not sure what happens as soon as we hit the ground, how fast the aircraft will go. Decreasing the power to almost 0. And then you can press the brakes. I would be careful with the brakes, to be honest, because as you can see, the aircraft has 2 wheels over here, and if you press the brakes too hard, it might happen that you would say that you will flip over, right, and that this part of the aircraft will be in front of you. But to be honest, I'd say the landing was not that bad, at least. Maybe the approach was not that good, but the landing itself was pretty soft, at least. That's what I think. And we're bringing the aircraft now, taking it off the runway, right, so other people can enjoy this nice airport. And don't forget to push the brakes until you simply fully throttle down the aircraft, right? So let's go inside and make sure that you're, say, shutting down the aircraft, right? So that also is pretty well documented, right? So after the landing, you can see that it's also, you need to press the brakes, you need to adjust the trim, but also if you park, you need to keep pressing that apply the brakes, and then make sure that the throttle is set to idle, and then before that, then switch these ones off. And then if you do that, right, the engine stops and then you can release the brakes. If you do it before that, you will end up, in this case, in this nice hangar, which you, of course, didn't want to do. So with this, we're at the end of this video, where we say kind of pretty, I would say it was a pretty short flight, yeah. Pretty short flight, but still a nice flight in Suriname, right, which is part of World Update number 19 already. A nicely updated airport. You can see a lot of details over here, but mainly we used it to take off and then to land again. So the first, I would say, part of the video, right, where we crashed, you could see how important braking the aircraft is, because if you don't brake the aircraft or don't push the brakes, and if you press that small, say, kind of yellow paper, you will directly start moving very, very fast. Also takeoff, I do need to practice more with this one. Also might have been caused by viewing it from the external side. So keep in mind that this aircraft is super sensitive. And again, here we end this video. I know that I do this always, so sorry for that. I hope you like this video. If you want to try this aircraft out yourself, if you're in Flight Simulator 2024, you're lucky, because then you got this aircraft for free, so you can already start using it. If you're in 2020, you need to pay some small amount of money to Asobo and Microsoft before you can use this one. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you back next time.